I let her go for her beliefs, but she went and did this while we were apart.
It was supposed to be the perfect relationship. Two college students caught up in the excitement of young love, navigating their way through life and all the challenges it brings. But what happens when love isn't enough? When deep-rooted values and unmet desires start tearing at the seams of even the strongest bond? That's exactly what happened between me and Ellie. For months we were happy together until we weren't. The one thing she wanted more than anything else in the world, her commitment to staying a virgin until marriage, slowly turned into the very thing that would drive us apart. I didn't realize it at the time, but my feelings of frustration and longing would push us toward a breaking point that neither of us were prepared for. And when Ellie reached out to me again, seeking reconciliation, everything changed. But what was I supposed to do when the past suddenly reappeared, full of painful truths I wasn't ready to face?
As the months passed after our breakup, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. I threw myself into finishing my degree, focusing on everything except the one person I couldn't stop thinking about, Ellie. It wasn't just the memories of our time together, it was the emptiness that lingered after our relationship fell apart. I had respected her boundaries, her decision to wait until marriage for sex. I told myself it was okay, that love was about more than physical intimacy, but deep down, I was slowly suffocating. I felt like I was giving everything to a relationship that wasn't growing, where Ellie remained steadfast in her refusal. It became harder and harder to ignore the jealousy I felt as I watched everyone around me form complex relationships while mine remained in this strange limbo. My frustration grew like a slow-burning fire. I began to resent the silence between us, the distance that felt so unnatural for two people who once shared everything. It wasn't just the lack of sex, it was the emotional distance that had built up, the silence where there should have been laughter, touch, connection. But I never pressured her. I thought love was enough, that our patience and understanding would eventually bridge the gap. But when I ended it, the sense of finality was crushing. She cried, pleading for us to work things out, but I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that we were on two separate paths. That was the hardest part, knowing we'd never be on the same page. I left her behind, giving hints it was the right thing to do, but 6 months later, when Ellie came back into my life, everything shifted. Her words haunted me. I missed you. I want to be with you. I'm leaving now. But was I ready to face the truth? Was I ready to forgive her for the thing that had broken us?
When Ali came back into my life, I thought I was prepared. After 6 months of silence, of forcing myself to move on, her sudden reappearance felt like a bombshell. I hadn't expected it, but there she was, standing in front of me with those familiar eyes filled with regret. Her voice cracked as she told me how much she missed me, how she wanted to pick up where we left off. But there was something in her eyes, something I couldn't ignore. It wasn't just the warmth that had once drawn me in. It was a kind of guilt, a hesitation that made my chest tighten. Then came the words that shattered everything I had built up in my mind. I'm ready now. I'm open to having sex if that's what you want. The very thing I'd wanted for so long, yet the way she said it felt like a hollow offering. Was it too late? But that wasn't the worst part. No, the worst part came after. As she opened up, I learned something I wasn't prepared for. She told me she had slept with another man during our breakup. The way she said it, like it was just another detail in her story, felt like a slap to my face. I had never pressured her. I had never demanded anything from her. But here she was, explaining how someone else had convinced her to do what she had refused to do with me for years. I felt like I had been led on, strung along in a relationship where my needs were never truly considered. Anger popped inside me, but beneath it was a deep, annoying sadness. Why didn't she tell me sooner? Why did she have to wait until now? until everything was already falling apart. My heart was a battlefield of emotions, betrayal, confusion, and an overwhelming sense of lost time. And just said she was asking for a second chance. Could I give her one? Or had the damage been done?
I could feel the blood drain from my face as her words hit me like a freight train. She slept with someone else. The betrayal wasn't just in the act, it was in the timing, the way it hung in the air between us like an unbearable weight. She had stayed silent for months, not a word of this to me when we broke up. And now, 6 months later, she was sitting in front of me asking for forgiveness, asking for a second chance. But at what cost? I couldn't help but feel like a fool. All the time I had spent waiting, being patient, and respecting her boundaries, only to have her give that part of herself away to someone else? What was I supposed to do with that? Was I supposed to act like everything was okay? Pretend like the years of restraint, the hopes of a future together, didn't just collapse in front of me? I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I was paralyzed. How could she do this to me? How could she wait so long, making me feel like I wasn't enough, only to give that part of her to someone else so easily? My mind raced, each question more painful than the last. The anger in my chest was suffocating, but what hurt more was the sharp sting of rejection. She hadn't just refused me, she had chosen someone else. It wasn't about sex anymore. It was about trust. Why did it take losing me for her to realize what she wanted? Ellie tried to explain. She said the guy was persistent, that it wasn't a reflection of her feelings for me, but I didn't believe her. The hurt was too raw. My heart wanted to reach out to her, to believe in the history we shared, but my head told me I was just a backup. I had been waiting for her to be ready, waiting to be the one who deserved her love. But now, I wasn't even sure if I still wanted that love. Not after she had given it to someone else so easily. I looked at her, the woman I once adored, and realized I didn't recognize her anymore. The spark of attraction was gone, replaced by a deep, gnawing resentment. There was nothing she could say that would make this okay. I had been waiting for a chance to heal. But now I understood. This was my chance to let go. I couldn't go back. Not now. Not after everything. And so I made my decision. I asked for space. I needed time to process. But deep down, I knew the answer. This wasn't something I could ever come back from. She had already moved on. Now it was time for me to do the same.
In the days that followed, I tried to bury the storm of oceans that raged inside me. The decision to walk away from Ellie wasn't as simple as I had hoped. Every part of me screamed that I had done the right thing, yet there was a voice in my head that refused to quiet. It whispered doubts, asking if I had truly made peace with the decision, or if I was running from something I wasn't ready to face. But the truth was, the more I thought about it, the more I realized just how much of myself I had sacrificed for someone who had never truly been able to give back in the way I needed. I didn't want to admit it, but the resentment I had buried so deep was now boiling over. I had spent years waiting for Ellie to change her mind, to realize what we had together was worth taking that next step. Yet, in one careless moment, she had shattered everything. Her words, her actions, and the decisions she made during our time apart. She had chosen someone else, not just physically, but emotionally, in ways I couldn't fathom. And in doing so, she had torn away the last piece of trust that had held me together.
Even as I tried to move forward, my mind kept replaying our conversations, our moments of laughter, our plans for the future. But it was as if someone had taken a knife and sliced through the fabric of what we were, leaving behind only the raw, jagged edges of betrayal. I couldn't just let go of everything so easily. Every time I saw someone who reminded me of her, someone with that same light in their eyes, that same smile, it made me ache in places I didn't know existed. I wanted to feel indifferent, but my heart refused to comply. The days dragged on, and I found myself struggling with the emptiness Ellie had left behind. I focused on my work, threw myself into studying for the final exams I had been avoiding for months. But every quiet moment was filled with the ghost of her, a shadow of someone I once thought would be my future. I couldn't escape it, no matter how hard I tried. What hurt more than anything was how much I had lost while holding on to someone who never truly wanted to stay. The pain of realizing that I had been the one to wait, to give everything, while she was free to live her life was almost unbearable. But in those moments, I also began to understand the importance of letting go, of choosing myself. It wasn't going to be easy, and I wasn't sure if I was ready, but deep down, I knew it was the only way forward. A clean break was what we both needed, no matter how impossible it felt.
As the weeks passed, the weight of my decision settled into me like a thick fog. I had chosen to walk away, but in some ways, it felt like I was still waiting for something to change. I couldn't let go of the idea of Ellie, not entirely. A part of me kept hoping that maybe I had made a mistake, that maybe, just maybe, the love we once had could be rekindled. But I knew better. Every time I thought about the past, about all the things I had sacrificed, and all the trust she had shattered, it felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. Then came the phone call, the one I didn't expect, but the one that felt inevitable. Ellie reached out again, asking to meet. She said she had thought long and hard about everything and that she missed me terribly. My stomach sank as I listened to her voice crack through the phone, filled with an aching vulnerability I couldn't ignore. She begged me to reconsider, to give her a chance to explain, to take her back. I wanted to say no. I wanted to stand firm in my decision. But then she said it. I'm ready now, ready for everything we talked about. And just like that, all the anger I had buried, all the betrayal I had worked through, came rushing back to the surface. I agreed to meet her, though I knew deep down that I wasn't going to get the closure I was looking for. What did she think she could say that would fix everything? The trust had been broken in ways I couldn't undo, and no amount of apologies could make up for the years I had waited, for the years I had spent hoping that one day she would see me as enough. When we met, her eyes were filled with that familiar sadness, but I couldn't let myself be fooled. I could see it now, clearly. The person I had once loved was no longer the same. And I realized in that moment, this wasn't about forgiveness anymore. It was about accepting that we had both moved on, that I had to let go, for good.
The moment I saw Ellie, something inside me twisted painfully. There she was, standing in front of me with that same familiar face, yet everything about her felt foreign. The years we had spent together seemed to have dissolved into nothing more than fading memories. Her eyes held that sadness, that desperation I had always seen when she didn't get her way. But this time, it wasn't enough to make me feel the old pull. I had agreed to meet her, but now that we were face to face, I felt a heavy sense of finality pressing in. She spoke, her voice quivering, telling me how much she had missed me, how regretful she was for the way things had ended. But there was something hollow in her words, a gap I couldn't ignore. She confessed that she had slept with another man during our time apart, something that felt like a punch to the gut. The more she explained, the more detached I became. She said it was just a fling, something she did because she was confused. but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was minimizing what she had done. It wasn't just the act itself, it was the way she had carried on like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just torn apart everything I had ever believed in. I felt the anger bubbling up again, but this time, it wasn't just anger, it was betrayal, a bitter realization that everything I had believed in was a lie. She had claimed to be waiting for me, but in reality, she had moved on long before I had even let go. Her actions felt like a slap in the face, and in that moment, I couldn't look at her the same way. I felt no love, only a profound sadness for what we once had and what we could never have again. And so, despite everything inside me that wanted to hold on, I made the hardest choice of all. I stood up, told her I couldn't do this anymore, and walked away. The finality of it hit me like a wave, but deep down, I knew it was the only way. The past was over, and I was ready to face the future.
7 ngày trôi qua, tôi đã cố khâm huynh Zeta đã rời đi với cô ấy, nhưng cuộc thế lại mương động vào bệnh lỗ trong cô ngựa và each of these went by. I tried to convince myself that walking away from Ellie was the right thing to do. But it didn't take long before the emptiness crept in. I couldn't stop replaying the conversation in my head, her words echoing in the corners of my mind. She had apologized, explained herself, and asked for another chance. But nothing she said could erase the betrayal. I had spent so many years loving her, waiting for her to be ready, and in return, she had given herself to someone else while I was left in the dark. I had believed that a love was something special, something worth waiting for. But now I saw it for what it really was, a game of waiting for her to make up her mind while I suddenly sacrificed my own needs. Each day felt heavier than the last, and the anger I had buried deep inside started to resurface. But beneath that anger was something far worse, regret. I regretted letting her take control of my heart for so long. I regretted not seeing the warning signs sooner. It wasn't just about its sex. It was the fact that she had moved on without me, that she had found someone else who could offer her what I had been so desperate to give her. In that moment, I realized that I wasn't just angry at Ellie, I was angry at myself for allowing this to go on for so long. I wanted to feel numb, to push the pain away, but it wouldn't go. It lingered in every quiet moment, in the spaces where I used to think of her, where I used to dream of a future with her. Now all I could see was the shattered version of a love story I had built in my mind. It was hard to admit it, but I had been living in the past, hoping for something that would never come. And no matter how much I wanted to rewind time and fix everything, I knew deep down that what had been broken could never be mended. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. It was time to let go, not just of her, but of the version of myself that had kept holding on to the past. I had to stop looking back and stop moving forward, no matter how painful it was. The future was waiting, and it was time to embrace it.
The truth settled into me like a cold, hard fact. There was no going back. I had spent so long convincing myself that there was still hope, that I could somehow fix the wreckage of our relationship. But as the days passed, it became clearer and clearer. Ellie had moved on, and so should I. I couldn't keep clinging to something that had long since disappeared. I had given everything to her, waited patiently for years, and yet she had found someone else. The bitter reality was that our love wasn't the grand, perfect thing I had once believed. It was fragile, built on promises she couldn't keep, and ultimately, it was hollow. Every time I thought I might be able to forgive her, I was reminded of the cold, hard truth. She had given herself to someone else while I was still holding on to memories of us. It wasn't just the physical betrayal that hurt, it was the emotional abandonment. I had been there for her, always, yet in the end, I was just a placeholder. The anger I felt was consuming, but beneath that anger was a deep, gnawing emptiness, a feeling that I had wasted so much time waiting for something that would never come. I could feel the weight of the past pressing down on me, but I knew I couldn't keep living in it. I had to move on, even though it felt like I was tearing apart a piece of my soul in the process. I had given her every piece of me, but in return, I had nothing but the echoes of what could have been. The hardest part wasn't walking away. It was accepting that no amount of longing or regret would change what had happened. It was time to stop fighting for a future that was never meant to be. Time to let go, for good. I wasn't ready, but I had no choice. It was over.
It's strange, isn't it? How you can love someone so deeply, give them every part of yourself, only to find that they've moved on while you were still holding on to the past. I thought I could forgive Ali. I wanted to, for both our sakes. I even convinced myself that with time, I could rebuild what we had, like it was just a broken piece that could easily be fixed. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself. The more I tried to process what happened, the more I realized that forgiveness wasn't the answer. How could I forgive someone who had never truly seen me? Someone who has asked me to wait years for something she was willing to give away so easily. The truth cut deeper than any betrayal ever could. The real betrayal was in her never truly valuing me. I kept telling myself that it was all about moving on, that time would heal the wounds, but the scars were still there, raw and bleeding. I tried to fill the emptiness with distractions, my work, my studies, even small moments of happiness, but nothing could shake the nagging pain that I had been duped into thinking I mattered. The truth was, Ali had already made her choice. She didn't want to wait for me anymore, and in the end, I was just left to pick up the pieces of what had once been. The hardest one wasn't just accepting the betrayal. It was realizing how much of my own identity had been tied up in her. For so long, I had defined myself by our relationship. She was my future, my everything. But now I was standing on my own, a stranger to the person I had been. I wasn't sure who I was anymore, what I wanted, or how to move forward. But one thing became clear. I couldn't keep going back to the past. I couldn't keep longing for something that no longer existed. If I truly wanted peace, I had to let go of everything. Her, the memories, the future I had dreamed of, and start over, no matter how painful it would. This time, I had to choose myself.
The decision to move on was the hardest choice I had ever made. Walking away from Ellie felt like tearing apart a part of myself, a part I wasn't sure I could live without. But deep down, I knew it was the only way. I had to face the truth. No matter how much I had invested, no matter how much I had loved her, she was never going to be the person I needed her to be. The future I had envisioned with her was a fantasy, a dream built on the hope that she would change. But she never did. In those final moments, when I made the decision to truly let go, there was a strange sense of clarity. For the first time in months, I felt free. It wasn't the freedom I had hoped for, but it was freedom nonetheless. I was no longer tied to the past, no longer holding on to something that wasn't meant to be. I had to face the hurt, the betrayal, and the fear of starting over. But in that moment, I knew that if I didn't let go of Ellie, I would never have the chance to find myself again. I wasn't ready to move on, but I had no choice. The past was over. The future was mine to rebuild.